It started with a knock on the door, familiar yet formal. I wasn't expecting anyone. My husband, David, had left early that morning without so much as a goodbye. Lately, that had become routine. The man who once used to kiss my forehead and pour my coffee now barely looked me in the eye. When I opened the door, a man in a gray suit handed me an envelope. Eviction notice. "You've got 7 days," he said flatly, and turned without waiting for a reaction. I stood in the doorway, frozen, the envelope trembling in my hand. It was addressed to me, my full name, no mistakes. Inside was a cold legal document stating that I was to vacate the property immediately, under the authority of my husband. At first I thought it was a joke, some kind of sick prank. We had arguments. Who doesn't after 12 years of marriage? But this? Eviction? From my own home? When David came home that night, he didn't even flinch when I confronted him. "What the hell is this?" I shouted, holding up the notice. He calmly took off his coat and poured himself a drink. "It's exactly what it says. You've got a week. You're kicking me out of the house? David, we bought this place together." "No," he said sharply, turning to face me. "I bought it. I paid the down payment. It's in my name. You've lived here off of me long enough." My chest tightened. "You're serious?" As a heart attack. And then he turned and walked away, like he'd just ended a business deal and not 12 years of marriage. That night, I barely slept. I sat in his kitchen, replaying every conversation, every red flag I'd ignored. The secretive texts, the sudden late meetings, the way he had started calling me guest in arguments, as if preparing himself to see me as temporary. I thought I was going crazy, that maybe he was right, and I had no leg to stand on. But then I remembered something. 6 years ago, when David got caught in a financial scandal at work, everything we owned was at risk. To protect our home, we'd transferred the property title to me. On paper, it had made perfect sense. His lawyer had even insisted on it. At the time, I didn't ask too many questions. I just signed the forms, relieved that we were going to be okay. And then I realized those papers were never reversed. David thought he owned the house, but the deed was still in my name. Suddenly, my fear turned into something else entirely. Calm. Because in that moment, I understood something David didn't. He hadn't just underestimated me. He'd forgotten who actually held the power. For the next few days, I didn't say a word. I let David believe he'd won. He paraded around the house with smug satisfaction, whistling while he packed my things, my clothes, my books, my life, into cardboard boxes. I watched him from the kitchen window one morning as he loaded them into the garage, labeling them with sticky notes like he was organizing old junk for a yard sale. He avoided my eyes like a coward, but I never looked away. Every night he reminded me how many days I had left. 4 more days, he'd say with that venomous grin. "You should probably start looking for a hotel." But while he counted down, I counted documents. I pulled out the old fireproof lockbox from the back of my closet, the one he'd forgotten even existed. Inside was everything. The deed transfer from 6 years ago, notarized and recorded with the county, with my name clearly listed as the sole property owner. I ran it through legal verification software. Then I called a lawyer I trusted, someone David would never think to involve, an old friend from college named Lara, who specialized in property law. She confirmed it within minutes. "You're the owner, Amelia. He doesn't have a legal leg to stand on." I almost cried. Not because I was relieved, but because for the first time in weeks, I felt seen. This house wasn't just walls and bricks. It was where I had built my life, my garden, my marriage, and he thought he could rip it away like it meant nothing. But now I had something better than a defense. I had a trap. On the 6th day, David invited his new girlfriend over. Yes, her. The one I suspected for months. She pranced through the house like she'd already moved in. Blonde, polished, half my age. She even had the nerve to sit on my kitchen stool and drink from my favorite mug. I stayed silent, observant. Let them laugh, let them gloat. That night, David slid an envelope across the dinner table. "Your final notice," he said. I opened it slowly, deliberately, eyes never leaving his. "Final? You'll be out by noon tomorrow. I'll change the locks myself." I nodded and smiled. "Sounds fair." He looked surprised. "No argument?" "None at all," I said, standing to clear the table. But what he didn't know was that while he handed me his eviction notice, I'd already filed mine. With my name on the deed, Lara had prepared a cease and desist for unlawful eviction, along with a legal order demanding that he vacate the property within 72 hours, or face civil charges for harassment and fraud. I had it notarized, served, and scheduled for delivery the next morning. Let him sleep well tonight, because tomorrow, I'd be the one knocking. David always woke up late on Sundays, shirtless, smug, the king of his crumbling little castle. That morning was no different, except this time, there was a knock at the door. He shuffled to answer it in sweatpants and arrogance, clearly expecting another delivery, or maybe his girlfriend dropping by with overpriced coffee. Instead, he found a process server. "David Langston?" the man asked, holding a thick white envelope. "Yeah? You've been served." The door closed fast. I heard the slap of the envelope hitting the floor, followed by footsteps, heavy and fast, storming toward the kitchen, where I sat calmly reading the paper. "What the hell is this?" he barked, waving the documents in front of me. I took a slow sip of coffee before answering. "That's your notice to vacate the premises. Effective immediately." "You think this is funny?" His voice was rising now, panic bleeding into rage. "Not funny," I said. "Just fair. You can't evict me. This is my house." I pushed a copy of the deed across the table. It was the original, stamped, notarized, and signed in his own hand from 6 years ago. "I'm the sole owner, David. You gave it to me voluntarily. You just forgot. Or maybe you thought I did." He stared at the paper, speechless. Then he laughed, short, hollow, nervous. "This won't hold up. I'll get a lawyer." "Already has," I said. "The documents are filed. You tried to illegally evict me from a property I own. That's fraud. You handed me a fake notice and packed up my things like I was a guest." He didn't speak. "So," I continued, "you can either leave peacefully by tomorrow afternoon, or we take this to court. But if we do that, I'm going to press for damages. Emotional distress, malicious intent, fraudulent eviction attempt. Shall I go on?" His jaw clenched. He didn't know what to say. He'd underestimated me so completely that he couldn't even process the reversal. I stood, walked past him slowly, and paused at the doorway. "Oh, and David?" He turned. "Tell your girlfriend to return my mug." He didn't laugh. He didn't yell. He just stood there, shrunken, defeated, realizing that everything he'd tried to steal from me was never his to begin with. That evening, he began packing his own bags. No boxes this time, no smug labels, just silence. The next morning, he left. No goodbye, no apology, just the quiet thud of the front door closing. For the first time in weeks, I stood in my living room and breathed. The air felt cleaner. The light looked warmer. The house was mine again, by law, by truth, by battle won. But this wasn't over. David had tried to bury me. Now it was my turn to dig. The house felt hollow after David left, but not in a way that hurt. It was the silence of healing, of wounds closing. Still, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was unfinished, unsaid. So I started cleaning, not just tidying, but scrubbing every room, opening every drawer, peeling back the layers of his life that had been rotting inside my home. That's when I opened his closet. His suits were gone, his shoes, his watches, everything he'd once preened himself with, gone. But in the far back, wedged behind an old golf bag, was a locked metal briefcase. I stared at it for a long time. David had never been subtle. If he left something behind, especially locked, it wasn't an accident. It was either a mistake or a message. I picked the lock. It was surprisingly easy. Inside, I found papers, dozens of them, financial statements, investment accounts. But the deeper I went, the darker it got. Bank transfers to a personal account in someone else's name. Not his, not mine, but hers, his girlfriend. He hadn't just planned to evict me. He'd been funneling marital assets into her account for months, laundering money right under my nose, money that technically belonged to both of us, and he was trying to hide it. But now I had the proof. I called Lara again. She didn't even hesitate. "You can file for asset recovery. With those documents, you'll not only get back what he stole, but he could face criminal charges." That night, I drafted a formal notice of intent to pursue legal action. I attached copies of the forged transfers and highlighted the breach of fiduciary duty under our marital laws. Then I sent it to him. His response came the next morning. A single text. "You don't want to do this." I replied with one word. "Already did." By noon, he called, begging, bargaining, offering cash settlements. Said it was a misunderstanding. Said he'd make it right, but it was too late. He didn't just try to erase me from my own life. He tried to profit from my erasure, to build a future with someone else using the foundation we had laid together. So I pressed forward. I filed the claim. Within a week, his accounts were frozen. The girlfriend vanished. His world crumbled, quietly, legally, and entirely. And I didn't even have to raise my voice. That's the thing about trying to bury someone like me. You better make sure they don't know where the shovel is. Because now, not only was I standing tall again, I was holding the damn deed, the documents, and the truth. The courtroom was cold, clinical, and unforgiving. David sat across from me, looking smaller than I'd ever seen him. No expensive suit, no confident posture, just a man unraveling at the seams, realizing his empire was built on stolen sand. The judge reviewed the evidence silently. Transfer logs, forged documents, notarized affidavits, the title deed. Everything lined up. Everything proved what I already knew. He had lied, manipulated, and tried to erase me, and failed. When the ruling came, it wasn't just in my favor. It was devastating for him. David was ordered to pay restitution, return all misappropriated funds, and surrender any claim to assets acquired during the marriage. The judge even referred his case for criminal review based on the financial misconduct. And just like that, the man who tried to evict me walked out of that courtroom with nothing but a ruined reputation and a mountain of debt. I walked out with more than legal victory. I walked out with clarity. A month later, I listed the house for sale. Not out of spite, but because I was ready to start fresh. The house had been mine legally, but emotionally it carried too much weight. Too many memories, too many ghosts. I wanted peace, not permanence. It sold in 5 days, above asking price. With the money, I bought a small sunlit cottage on the edge of a quiet lake. Nothing extravagant, but beautiful in its simplicity. A place that felt like me, not an image I was forced to fit into. And every morning, I wake up to the sound of birds and water instead of silence and suspicion. I planted a garden. I repainted the walls. I rebuilt myself. Sometimes people ask me if I ever think about David. I don't. He became part of a past I survived. A lesson, not a loss. Because the truth is, I didn't just win a legal battle. I took back my story. He handed me an eviction notice, thinking he'd written the final chapter. But what he didn't know is that I had the deed to the ending, and I wrote it myself.